Le royaume dans le ciel. Ça pourrait être le nom du nouveau film de Miyazaki, mais non. C'est comme cela qu'on surnomme un petit pays méconnu de tous, le Lesotho. Et pourquoi ce surnom? Parce qu'avec une altitude minimale de 1400 mètres, vous aurez la tête dans les nuages et les montagnes plein les yeux. Je vous emmène avec moi quelques jours à la découverte de ce pays aussi grand que la Belgique. Il est situé en Afrique australe, enclavé au milieu de l'Afrique du Sud, dont il est économiquement dépendant. Pourquoi? Parce qu'au XIXe siècle, après avoir résisté contre l'avancée des Boers, le roi Moshawshau a demandé l'aide des Anglais pour les combattre. Mais en 1868, ce territoire est devenu un protectorat de l'Empire britannique. Les Basotho ont réussi à ne pas être intégrés à l'Union sud-africaine créée en 1910 et ils n'ont donc pas connu l'apartheid. Le Lesotho est finalement devenu indépendant il y a 50 ans, le 4 octobre 1966. Le drapeau actuel du Lesotho a été adopté en 2006. Les trois couleurs, bleu, blanc, vert, représentent la devise nationale, pluie, paix et prospérité. Vous pouvez admirer le chapeau traditionnel Basotho. La première fois que j'ai vu un Basotho le porter, ça m'a fait tout de suite penser à Kirikou. Pourtant, ce dessin animé se déroule en Afrique de l'Ouest. On peut se demander s'il y a des influences communes. La deuxième surprise a été de découvrir l'habitation d'une partie de la population qui vivait dans des huttes. L'image de Kirikou m'est encore venue en tête. Même si la vision de l'Afrique véhiculée par ce film est réductrice et stéréotypée, on a tendance à oublier qu'elle détient une part de vérité. Enfin, j'ai comparé avec étonnement le paysage du Lesotho à celui des montagnes de l'Atlas, au Maroc. Mais tout le monde ne vit pas dans les montagnes. Au moins un quart des 2 millions de Lésothans vivent dans la capitale, Maseru. La majorité des habitants du Lesotho sont Basotho, c'est-à-dire qu'ils appartiennent à une ethnie bantoue d'Afrique centrale qui a migré au sud de l'Afrique au XVIe siècle. L'un des éléments emblématiques de cette culture Basotho reste la couverture, aussi appelée kobo en Sesotho, qui est l'une des deux langues officielles aux côtés de l'anglais. Je vous laisse découvrir.
Can show everybody wherever you are that you are responsible, you know where you are coming from. So it's very important.
So you know your culture.
Yeah. Exactly. So you can put on a blanket like that. And a new married lady have to be shown a sheep. If they welcome you the next morning, if you came last night culturally, then there will be a man coming with a sheep next to the door and welcoming you with that sheep and then going back slaughtering the sheep. And when the blood comes out is the time one of the girls chosen to dress you everything new have to come dress you the longer dress under the knee. You have to cover your body to hide because it's only your husband have allowed to see your body now from that day. So you have to put on. She will dress you. You cannot dress yourself because now they welcome you with that sheep and you are coming from different tribe to a new tribe. Even though you are in the same tribe, but they have to welcome you to show that you have to have your blanket flap in to show that you kept your virginity. Then there will be a blanket lie down on the floor because you got married culturally.
Après cette pause culture, je vais vous faire découvrir le sport national et moyen de déplacement très répandu, le cheval. Maintenant, je vous emmène dans des grottes où les peintures rupestres témoignent de l'existence d'hommes des milliers d'années avant la colonisation. Je vous laisse savourer avec humour les symboles de ces peintures.
Is that for the Bushmen, the Ellen was spiritually the most important animal, much like the lamb in Christianity. Ellen are ambiguous animals because the male has more fat than the female, the opposite to all other animals and humans. It was believed that fat contained supernatural potency, and thus the fatter animal, the more potent it was. When Ellen were killed, they were hunted on occasion, their supernatural potency was released and people could dance well and heal people. That's wonderful.
The sun blazed so brightly up in the summer sky. I shouted at the mountains, watch me shine and fly. But then cracked the thunder and the heavens cried.
Notre passage à Malealea a été l'occasion de rencontrer Ken Dunn, fondateur de l'association Africa's Gift. Son but est entre autres d'aider les communautés rurales locales à développer une agriculture biologique innovante et durable. L'association accueille aussi des groupes de volontaires étrangers. Le nom de l'association, qui signifie le cadeau de l'Afrique, vient du fait qu'en venant sur ce continent, on finit par recevoir plus que ce que l'on est venu donner. Ken Dunn tente de ne pas suivre le modèle de certaines ONG voulant sauver l'Afrique, mais je vous laisse juger par son témoignage.
You're going to see this guy all over the field. And this is grazing vetch. It's part of the pea family. What this does is it covers the soil and it actually retains the moisture. So I'm actually, look, my knees are wet just with, but actually if you put your hand underneath here and you go to the soil, you'll find that the soil is moist. Yeah? And this is a key. Yeah. So just close it now because I want to keep the soil nice and moist. But this guy is an amazing plant. This is another game changer because this one, it actually is. This is used. We're practicing conservation agriculture here. Conservation agriculture is as it says, right? You know, we're actually looking to hold on to our soil. Hold on to the moisture in our soil, hold on to the carbon in our soil, the life in our soil. What we've done since taking this farm over is try to restore life in the soil. When I had a doctor from the University of Lesotho come, we dug a pit. It was completely dead. The soil had no organic matter, no organic life in it at all. That was 4 years ago, so we've done a big program of restoration. But this guy is amazing because it dies back at the time you want to plant your food through it. Right? So it's like a geotextile, but because it's a pea, it actually takes nitrogen out of the sky and locks it into the ground. So it's a fertilizing ground cover, yeah, and it supports food production. So we're going to plant maize, we're going to plant other crops through it, and I don't know if you've come across, and it's counterintuitive this, that if you plant two crops, if you just plant one crop, you would think that it's going to be it's going to grow, you know, the best, it's going to get the most out of the soil. But actually if you companion plant and you plant something which support each other, you can actually get better production from two than you can from one again. And we are going to become a seed bank for this guy. We're going to grow in some areas this exclusively. So underneath the trees, we're not going to interplant, we're just going to grow it to seed, harvest the seed, and then share that with other practitioners. Our mission is not to go and knock on doors and say, hey, you need to do this, but actually do it here and get people, and school, secondary school there, primary school there, church there, you know, A lot of footfall, a lot of interest already. Last season, the maize failed. In here, we had 4 or 5 cobs on the stover. Why is yours working and mine's is not? You know, that's the kind of question, that's the kind of dialogue that we see. It's not like that. And this guy here, this farmer just to our right here, has actually bought a whole load of grazing. So you were saying about, you know, maybe you should, you know, speak to people in Paris about actually coming and doing. On my website I have, which is www.africasgift.org. I actually use Mr. Mandela's speech of, you know, he said in April of 2009, it's now in your hands to make a difference. I've done my bit, more or less. I'm now handing it over to you, and so I say on the website, I use that phrase, and I say, make a difference. And for some people, they can't come to Africa, either through finances or through health or whatever circumstances, but they can actually make a contribution to the work. So I say, make a difference from your armchair, back home, or make a difference up close in Africa. And that's where I'm actually inviting people. I'm inviting people to come, and it knows no age, this work. So I bring, last 2 weeks ago I was working with a group that had 10-year-olds in it, up in Uganda, and they were physically, emotionally, you know, challenged by the work. And next month I'm actually working with retired people in their 60s and 70s. I had one say to me, why Lesotho? Why Lesotho? And I say, well, it's breathtakingly beautiful for one thing, but also the people are so welcoming. You feel so much at home here. I've never ever once felt uncomfortable in this country.